coming to the second point, installation, function and maintenance of milking equipment. So functions of, what are the functions of a milking equipment? The functions of milking equipment are to, allows the cow to allows the milk to flow out from the teat. It has a massaging effect, so that will prevent the injury from the constant. You cannot keep a constant where you cannot use a vacuum pump to milk out an animal, because if there is a constant vacuum, it will cause a lot of injury to the teat. So what a milking machine does is that it will provide a phase of vacuum, then the vacuum is break, then that break in the vacuum will give a massaging effect to the udder, then again vacuum comes, so that milk comes out of the udder. So it gives a vacuum as well as a massaging effect, and this massaging effect will prevent injuries from happening. And also the milk is taken through a closed conveyor system to the final the milking can or a bulk cooling container and that will prevent the milk from further contamination. So there are some basic things like there is a vacuum system, there is a milk transportation system, and then there is a bulk tank when it comes to the parts of a milking machine. So the vacuum system has a vacuum pump, vacuum tank and a regulator, and there is a pulsator. Pulsator is called the heart of a milking machine, and that will give this alternate vacuum and a phase of rest. And there are two phases, that is the milk phase and the rest phase. And then there is a pulsation cycle, that is the number of vacuum and number of rest phase. So milk phase means there will be vacuum, so vacuum will cause milk to come out, then the vacuum breaks, so the milk will stop, udder will be massaged. So the entire one cycle is known as a pulsation cycle, and ideal is about 40 to 60 pulsation cycles per minute. Then there is pulsation rate, so that is the number of rest phase to milk phase in one pulsation cycle. So the ideal is 60 to 40, that is 60% of time it should be milking and 40% of time it should be given a rest phase. So that is the ideal. So pulsator is a very important part of the milking machine that can or prevent or cause that can cause or prevent the occurrence of mastitis. Then there is milk transportation system, so it has the liner and the milk claw. Again, liner is very important when it comes to mastitis because it can be a source of infection. It is usually made of natural rubber or a synthetic rubber or silicone, and it should be changed periodically. So it all comes with the manufacturer's recommendations. So natural rubber will have the least time, you have to more frequently change it, whereas silicone can be like, it can have some thousands of milking can be done with that. Then milk claw is the steel mechanism that is attached onto the udder. So inside the milk claw there will be liner. So milk claw should be regularly examined for cleanliness. So milk claw will have these air vents. So air vents are the point through which the pulsator cuts off the vacuum and lets the air in. So milking machine, when veterinarian should be regularly examining the milking machine, and while he is examining, he should examine the milk claw, especially the air vent of the milk claw, because that they can be plugged with some debris, and also it should be examined, and the air vent should be clear, and you have to check for the liner connections also to see if there is any breaks or this thing. And the hose that connects from the air vent to the milk claw to the container should be as short as possible to reduce the contamination. Then there is bulk milk tank. Bulk milk tank, again it's a dairy technological design. So, but if the design is not sanitary enough, then it can be an important source of contamination of raw milk. Okay. Then cooling capacity, it should be it should ideally have 3 times what it has to store. So if your daily output is like 100 liters, your bulk tank should be 300 liters. So that is the part of a milking machine and the function. Now, how can you evaluate evaluation of milking machine? You have to do a daily inspection, and there should be regular independent checkups. So, independent checkup means the all these parties should regularly check up the milking machine of each farmer, so that the points through which a farmer checks the milking machine may be different, the way a veterinarian checks the milking machine may be different, for a technician it will be different, and for an extension worker it will be different. So all these parties should regularly do an independent checkup of the machine, and they can have communicate with each other to understand how the machine work, how is the things functioning, and if there are any flaws, the farmer or the technician or the veterinarian can resolve the issues. So there should be a regular and independent checkup of milking machine. And what are the points where milking machine can act as a source of infection? So these are the points that a veterinarian should keep in mind when a milking machine is used. So it can be a carrier of pathogen, it can be a pathway of cross infection, and if there is an impaired function of the milking machine, there will be teeth damage. As you remember in the last class probably, the amount of teeth damage during the later stages of lactation will result in increased susceptibility of the cow with larger number of parturition, or the high parity. That is how the high parity is associated with the increased risk of mastitis. So impaired vacuum again is another problem. So if the vacuum is impaired, sudden cut off of the vacuum will cause the extracted milk to propel back into other udder, and then can cause contamination. If pulsation failure happens, pulsation failure can cause teeth damage. Then there is an impact problem called as an impact mechanism, that is the abrupt loss of vacuum. So it will cause an impact onto the teeth, and that can cause severe pain to the cow, and can make the udder more susceptible to mastitis. Then there is hand milking. So hand milking is actually not favored when it comes to a mastitis control program, especially in 10-point mastitis control program. Hand milking, or even the presence of personnel during the milking time, has to be minimized. So hand milking is not an ideal method of milking, but it cannot we cannot go and say to our in an unorganized dairy sector like ours. So there are many things that has to be kept in mind during hand milking. Those are, the udder should be cleaned and dry. So people may use water or oil during milking, so that should be avoided. It should not, udder should not be lubricated, and lubrication of udder is ideally considered it's not considered ideal during milking. Then the hand of the milker, he has to wash his hand, he should not smoke, he should not spit during milking. So the personal hygiene of the milker is very important. You know about the full hand milking, stripping or knuckling should be avoided, and milking should be done as fast as possible, as silently as possible, and as efficient as possible. He should not be doing over milking, or he should not be doing under milking. So those are the important points when it comes to hand milking. Now, what is the third point? The third point is the dry cow management and therapy. Now, dry cow management therapy is the cornerstone of preventing mastitis. Okay, and this is aimed at reduced infected udders at calving, and it aims to reduce the number of infections at drying. So it will help in eliminating the present cases, and also help in preventing occurrence of new cases. Dry cow therapy is done during the dry period, and this is because new infections are high in the dry period, and there won't be any. So why we are doing this dry cow therapy or therapy during dry period? What is the importance? So this is because during dry period, you are not regularly dipping the animal, you are not regularly cleaning the udder, so there will be increased biodiversity, bacterial biodiversity on the surface of the udder. There could be teeth and lesions, and in some animals there will be a delay in formation of keratin plugs. So these increase the infection pressure on the udder. The resistance mechanism in mammary gland is another problem, because during the last 3 weeks of parturition and first 3 weeks after calving, the udder will be at its weakest immunity because of the increased volume of milk, stress of lactation, the change in the population of WBCs, and many other factors will cause the reduction of the resistance of udder to infections. And some animals, when the udder is dried off abruptly, or if milking is stopped abruptly, the milk canals will be full and there will be delay in keratin plug formation, and these all factors can cause increased risk of acquiring infection during the dry period. Then so it is again associated with parity. As I told you earlier, increased milk yield will be high, there will be delay in formation of the keratin plug, T10 lesions will be there, malapposition of teeth will be there. All these factors will cause an increased risk of mastitis as the parity of the animal increases. So that is why we have to go for dry cow therapy. What you do during dry cow therapy is that you administer higher dose of longer acting antibiotics into the udder. So the drugs commonly used are benzathine form of cefaclorin, benzathine, cloxacillin, sustained release forms of erythromycin, novobiocin, penicillin, and the general withhold period is like 30 to 45 days. So you release introduce a large volume of long acting antibiotic and let it sit there for a period like 30 to 45 days. And since the withhold period is very high, you are not supposed to do a dry cow therapy within 1 month of calving. And short acting cefaclorin is also used for dry cow therapy, especially in case of Staphylococcus aureus. So you give 2-3 applications of cefaclorin during the dry stage, and it is shown that Staph aureus responds well to this short acting dry cow therapy. So how to do a dry cow therapy, or how to infuse the medicine? So first you have to milk out the udder, give a pre-dipping, dry it, then disinfect with rubbing alcohol with the far side first, and then infuse the drug. So while infusing the drug, you have to do with the near side first, and you should not introduce the whole of the nozzle into the udder. You have to, or the cannula into the udder. Only you have to do a partial insertion so that it reaches only the rosette of Furstenberg, and then you infuse the udder, infuse the drug into the udder, massage upwards slowly, and then you do a post dipping also. Then systemic norfloxacin nicotinate is another method. So I have told you about short acting dry cow therapy with this thing, cefaclorin. Then this norfloxacin nicotinate is given subcutaneously, or systemic dosage is given in case of where you have increased prevalence of Staphylococcus aureus. Then there are vaccines that are being done, but they will not help in eliminating chronic infections, but is used as an adjunct therapy. So one such example is the JS5 strain of E. coli, which are the R mutant of gram-negative bacteria. So E. coli J5 is very popular among dairy industry because it is proven to reduce occurrence of environmental mastitis following calving. Then there is the use of internal teeth sealants during dry period. Bismuth subnitrate in paraffin base is used. So this is used because it has a very high specific gravity. So if you infuse it, it will get into the udder but settle back onto the teeth canal, and that forms a very impervious physical barrier during the dry period. So it is very efficient, and it has shown about 73% drop in new infections compared to the others that were not using the internal teeth sealant. Now success of a dry cow therapy will depend on various factors. It will depend upon the prevalence of Staphylococcus aureus itself, because Staph aureus during trichotherapy, the rate of success will be like 50 to 60% only. Then again, age of the cow, because the success decreases with age, because the increased probability of being infected with the Staphylococcus aureus, increased Staphylococcus increased somatic cell count will result in a lower success rate. If the herd hygiene is poor, then the rate of success will be less. And you have to keep in mind that trichotherapy is a therapy for gram positive cocci or organisms that cause contagious mastitis. It is not a very particularly effective for coliforms or the organisms that cause environmental mastitis. So that is trichotherapy. Now we will go to point number 4, which is lactational therapy. So again, lactational therapy, there is we have discussed in the treatment part. So you have to the point to discuss, only point to discuss is that the success of your treatment will depend on how early and how efficiently you are treating the animal. So early recognition of mastitis is very important as far as lactational therapy is concerned. Then culling of chronic cases. Chronic cases are a big problem, because these organisms remain in the gland, and biofilms, as biofilms or intracellular forms, and they may not be or antibiotics may not reach them. That is why many chronic cases, even trichotherapy may not function. So these animals have to be culled. So chronic cases and presence of fibrosis in the deeper parts of the udder will cause will not be amenable to trichotherapy. So these recurrent cases and chronic infections of Staphylococcus aureus should be better culled from the farm rather than retaining it. Then cases of Mycoplasma bovis, Nocardia, Pseudomonas will not respond to treatment, so they have to be culled. Once this infection has been diagnosed, they have to be culled. So how will you know which animals are to be culled? That is an important and pertinent question. So the culled animals, or you have to cull the chronically affected cases that will not respond to any other treatment. So you have to test look at the history and test the animal, and on palpation these animals usually will have a fibrotic mass on deeper palpation of the udder. And recurring cases, chronic infections with Staphylococcus aureus are to be culled based on the records. Then cases of M. bovis, Nocardia, Pseudomonas, which will not respond to any sort of treatment, will have to be culled. Now the decision on which animals to be culled is taken based on the the net present value of the cow versus the cost of the replacement heifer that you are going to replace in place of the culled animal. And so that decision is very important when you are going to cull an animal. Now when you bring in a replacement cow or a heifer, it should be made sure that the replacement also is not getting any contagious infection. So the person buying should know the quality of the milk produced by cow. So if it is an organized farm, he can verify the somatic cell count records of the farm and BMT SCC of the farm. And for individual cow, he can ask for the data. He can with the help of veterinarian, he can do a physical examination, then the formation of the teeth, the placement of the teeth, the shape and placement of the udder, shape of the teeth, everything has to be considered while a cow is to be, or a heifer is purchased, or a cow is purchased. And if we have a bacteriological result of the quarter level cow samples, then that is an added advantage also. Now the veterinarian has to ensure that the inbound herd is free from mastitis. So adequate tests need to be performed, both cow side and bacteriological tests need to be performed, and the milk should be checked for the presence of antimicrobial residues. So presence of antimicrobial residues may indicate a recent treatment with anti-microbial drugs, and these animals should be milked separately, and a strict quarantine will help in preventing occurrence of new cases in the farm, and also help in preventing the contagious spread of infection from the farm to the inbound herd. So these 5 points are the original are the part of original 5-point mastitis control program, and as I have told earlier, these points take care of the contagious part. Now later on, 5 more additional points were added on to this 5-point mastitis program to make a 10-point mastitis program, and these additional 5 points take care of the environmental aspect of mastitis. So the first one is that the cow should be placed in an appropriate environment, and as you know, environment can be external environment or the internal environment, and the external environment is influenced by a lot of factors like the climate, the geography, the terrain of the land, the altitude at which your farm is located, the rainfall, the humidity, all these factors which are beyond our control comes under the external environment, and the internal environment is the microclimate that is surrounding the animal, that is present in the housing where the animal is housing. So if the it could be a tie stall or a free stall. So in some farms the animals are allowed to graze extensively, and they come to milk only at the time of milking. So all these environmental factors play a role. So the environment of cow can be external or internal, and internal environment depends upon the micro environment of the cow, and it can be modified to a much extent by our interventions. So it will depend upon if it is the animal is in a tie stall environment or a free stall situation. In some farms the animal is allowed to graze, and the animal will return only during milking, whereas in some places like in ours mostly the animal is tethered to inside the stall for most part of the day. So inside the housing there will be issues of space, light, bedding. So all this, there should be an adequate space. So the general rule of thumb will be that when 2 cows are standing, these 2 cows should stand in such a way that they do not touch each other while these cows are standing or laying down. Then there should be an ample amount of light. So the popular guideline is that you should be able to read a newspaper inside the cow shed. So that much light should be there, natural or artificial. Then bedding should be dry, because environmental mastitis comes from the bedding, and moist or wetness of the bedding will be a breeding ground for coliform bacteria, and also there should be routine removal of dung, routine removal of urine. So similarly bedding should be dry. So there are a lot of discussions going on regarding the bedding material that is to be used. So in our place we usually use a rubber mat, but in certain places there are people who use straw, who use sand, everything as bedding material. So whatever be the bedding material, the hygiene of the bedding material is very important, and ideally the bedding material should be dry so that the udder of the animal remains clean. Then another point that comes with the an appropriate environment is the nutrition also, because happy cows gives more milk, and the role of certain vitamins and minerals, especially vitamin E and selenium in udder immunity is very much established. So adequate amount of vitamin E and selenium is very important in occurrence of preventing the occurrence of mastitis. Then there should be a positive required cation anion balance. Then individual cows should be supervised, and there should be these things are very important, that general hygiene of the animal is very important. Regularly you have to clip the hair around the udder of the animal, so that will help in preventing reducing the load, bacterial load and bacterial diversity on the surface of udder. So some people do clipping, then there is another practice called singeing. So those are the other aspects when it comes to appropriate environment. Record keeping is very important because you have to record the identity of the animal, date of if it has some onset of clinical mastitis, what are the treatment done, withholding time, lactation number, and the date of calving, and what are the tests that were being done, and that will give a fairly updated real time record of the performance, regarding the performance of the animal, and the history of mastitis of the animal. So that will aid in your goal setting. It will intimate you regarding how the production of the animal is changing, how it is responding to treatment, and if the animal is chronically carrying mastitis, or if there is a relapse of mastitis, and thus help in the monitoring of the udder health, and evaluating the risk of keeping the animal in the farm when it comes to controlling mastitis, and also the response to dry cow therapy. So based on these things, you can assess the cow versus herd health. That means you have to individually assess the cow and see if the cow is, how much the cow is contributing to the herd health. So if the cow is deteriorating the herd health, then you have to take additional management steps, maybe segregation, maybe culling. So it depends on various situations. Then the probability of recurrence of the disease, then lactation and seasonal profile of the animal, and also of course days of discarded milk. So these help in properly identifying the animals that are risk, or that are to be retained, or that are to be culled or segregated. So that is the importance of record keeping in a farm with respect to control of mastitis. Then there should be a regular udder health monitoring of udder health status. So for monitoring the herd health, you can go for bulk tank somatic cell count or culture on a regular interval, or herd level. You have to have a herd level measure of clinical mastitis also. So this is calculated as number of clinical mastitis cases per 100 cow in a farm per year. So when I say farm, it can be a local administrative area also. So as I told you in the beginning of this video, that these points have to be adapted to our local situation, and the ideal situation is where you have only less than 2%, that is 2 per 100 cow per year of clinical mastitis. So that is how you do the herd level monitoring. And for cow level, you can regularly check for the somatic cell count. So periodic checking with California mastitis test, periodic checking with a somatic for the somatic cell count, electrical conductivity. So these things have to be done periodically to see if there is subclinical mastitis, and appropriate therapy or decisions have to be taken. So that is the importance of monitoring the udder health. Then once you have all these systems in place, there is very another important thing that you have to do is to adopt you have to regularly review the health program. So once you may be starting, so the program may be running for 3 or 4 or 5 years. So like in the 5 years, a lot of things might have advancements might have happened than when you have started the program. So there may be new technologies, new ideas, new innovations. So these you have to be updated about the new technologies, and that has to be you have to decide if it is to be incorporated or to be discarded. Then your farmer and the farm operating hands should be regularly trained, and you have to regularly monitor the level of somatic cell count, or the quality of milk, or the amount of milk that you get, and you have to accordingly modify the strategies that are being applied. So that is how you review the health program. And finally, once your program is set and it is on a progressive basis, you should not hesitate to increase your standards, set the bar even higher, so that you get a better quality of and quantity of milk that is produced in your farm or in your local area. So those are the important points that you need to keep in mind on the strategies for controlling mastitis. But always you should remember that when you are talking about the control of mastitis, all these things, the 10 points of mastitis control program that I have been discussing rests on a three simple pillars, or three simple ideas. That is, your aim is to eliminate the existing infection, prevent new infections from happening, and regular monitoring of udder health. So keeping in these minds, you can easily relate to the 10-point mastitis control program, and it takes it takes insight, experience to apply the mastitis control programs onto a larger unorganized sector like ours. So you may have to apply all these things individually in an individual farm where you have 1 or 2 cows, or in a large herd where you have hundreds of cows. So that finishes our session on mastitis. So thank you.